This is such a good layout, agreeably full.
Do we need any more tables and chairs?
No, I think this is max. This is as big as it'll get.
And did we receive it? Just a bunch with 4 others.
Yeah. Yep.
Where
They're
are
here.
they?
Right, let's get going. It's 9, is it?
Yeah. Hold on, I'm just going to send this.
Yeah, that's fine. Hello.
Is it not?
What is it? Yeah. Hello? Hello? Ha 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 ha. The minute you walked in the joint, I could see you were a man. Oh no. We did it again.
It's so lovely to see you all, and yesterday's dinner was just lovely. I hope your heads aren't too sore from various amounts of alcohol that were consumed. Maybe that's just myself projecting that out. Is it me? Always me. What is going on?
It's faded again. Keep it up.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Right. Important things.
Yeah, there's a whole load of... so, we have a bookstore here today for the new book. We haven't seen it yet. I gather there are copies out here in the wild. I have no idea what it looks like. I do know that it's very, very good, though, because I've read it about 20 times doing the editing and proofreading. So the bookstore will be downstairs. There's a discount to buy it for conference. Nicola and I and other contributors will be around to sign it as well, if you so desire.
Yes, actually, can we have a show of hands of gossip contributors? Who's in that book? Look at you all. And can we have a show of custard contributors? Oh, very good. So there will be book signing for both books. So don't worry, you won't. You know,
yeah, if you've got both books there.
Yeah.
Oh, this is really annoying me. Yeah. Well, I'll go downstairs in a minute and sort them out. So we've had, unfortunately, some presenters aren't able to make it today due to awful family extenuating circumstances. So, but we're still running, we'll still roughly finish around 6 o'clock. It's still an absolutely amazing programme. Rob Drummond, though, somewhere over here, you're going to be on a bit earlier, so come and see me at the break.
Now.
No fire alarm. If there is a fire alarm, just get out of the building. That way. That way, also down the corridor, that's all fine. So if you do hear the fire alarm, that's real, unfortunately. Suitcases and things, you can leave them at the back of the room there, if you so wish. It's only us in this building today, so, you know, relatively secure. Toilets downstairs, and we have a toilet key. One of the ones needs to be unlocked. We have that key here. It's a bit of a clunky system to come and tell us you need the toilet, but that's the system we've got. And presenters, just tap the arrow forward, and your slides are all in one. In each session, they all run on after another, so you don't need to load up your presentation. The last slide of the person before you, yours will then run into that straight away. And for Q&A, we have some roaming mics. So if you've got a question, if you can just wait for the mic to get to you, and then do your question then. And I think that's
So just before we start...
Well, there's a few slides to go through.
Oh yes, if you're physically able, please could you stand up? And I mean physically able and sober, I mean, you know. So, could you sit down if you joined us at Liverpool in London for Academic Archers number 1? Can you sit down if you joined us in the University of Lincoln for Academic Archers number 2? Can you sit down if you joined us at the British Library for Academic Archers number 3? So everybody remaining is new. Hello, so sit down and feel very welcome.
So this is our running order for this morning. The most important bits, we've got the breaks there around 11 and then at 1 o'clock for lunch, an afternoon break as well. We're having dinner here, for those of you who've got tickets for the dinner this evening, dinner is here. So we're just in this building today. And that's our running order for tomorrow. And yeah, the live listen and hopefully the largest group tweet along for the omnibus. We shall see. And I think we should just get straight into business.
I think so too.
So the first session, agro business, the professional and political of Ambridge Enterprises. Get in! Olivia.
Olivia first.
There we go. Yeah. There we go. Good morning, Sheffield. So I'm so pleased to have been asked back to Academic Archers, even more so as in recent weeks because my recommendation 2017 paper on social media have trickled through. We've been hearing much more online interaction from Ambridge's businesses. I've left my abstract for today's paper here for you to read, mainly to show that I predicted Freddie's arrest some 3 months before it happened. When I initially pitched my ideas to the panel, I had planned to touch on what Pat and Tony could have done around the E. coli scandal and what effects the story may have had on the business. Tom may have a short memory, but Google certainly doesn't. Those romantically linked to the Bridge Farm heirs would do well to see what autocomplete is saying about them. Luckily, there's another paper this morning on Bridge Farm, so I'm going to focus on how a small business can get ahead of a crisis, with particular reference to Lower Loxley and Home Farm. When preparing for today, I wondered whether a more accurate title would have been How Not to Handle a Scandal, because actually Brian and Elizabeth have made a complete omni-shambles of it. Any business at some point will face some kind of PR crisis. Maybe the Daily Mail have written about you. And the way that you respond can either significantly damage your brand, alienate your customer base, or if well handled, can give you a much needed image boost. The first rule of crisis management is to avoid them. To do this, you need to assess where any problems may be. If you undertake a vulnerability audit, you will know where your weakness is and can prepare for a case scenario. It is not surprising that Brian had not undertaken such an audit. He, of course, would have to be prepared to admit to weaknesses to do so. But a vulnerability audit would have allowed Home Farm to anticipate the low mead crisis, and given that Brian knew that those barrels were there all along, he should have been more prepared for the potential damage, both actual and reputational. But assuming the worst will happen, even if you have planned ahead, we have a framework within which such a crisis can be controlled, and helpfully, it spells out the word crisis. The initial point is to recognise a crisis as an opportunity, but Brian has sorely neglected his chances to win friends and influence people. As our esteemed colleague Dr. Headlam has noted previously, his power network is not as strong as he thinks. He is not the king of Ambridge he believes himself to be. The next is to respect the feelings of those around him. His insistence that people trust him when there was no reason to do so ignored the feelings of locals, and he continued as though nothing was wrong. The next is to initiate corrective action. Well, he only did this under duress from the Environment Agency. Next is to show strong leadership skills by acting in a timely manner. Well, he absolutely did not do this, which created feelings of distrust towards his leadership, ultimately resulting in the personal embarrassment of being removed as Borsetshire Business Person of the Year. The penultimate point here is to reassess the corporate culture. This has changed at Home Farm, but not of his own volition. The final point is that the business can be sustained, but only under new leadership, in the form of Adam, who has a different relationship, both with the land and the locals. So overall, we're kind of scoring Brian about a 1 out of 6 here. I guess a bit of initiating corrective actions. Once the news of a crisis has broken, there is an immediate need for action. As in the medical world, in PR parlance too, this is known as the golden hour, although in PR it's not literally 60 minutes, obviously, when the news of a crisis breaks, but it's crucial to get the response right immediately. So you need to be proactive, transparent, and accountable. Brian was none of these. What we actually want is what I've termed the quadruple A response, which is to acknowledge the incident, accept responsibility, apologise, and act to avoid future disaster by investigating what had happened, taking steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. Brian didn't do any of these. Even if he had adhered to these simple steps, he would have been starting from a very low base. If you can take care to be proactive online and offline with your messaging to all your stakeholders, you'll be able to build your reputation and instill credibility, forming a bank of community trust, so that if you do find yourself in hot water, you can make a withdrawal from that bank. If I could take back in time, I would have encouraged Brian to have published an editorial explaining why they'd installed the herbal leys following the flooding. Adam's commitment to the environment would have bought Home Farm some goodwill. Imagine the benefit of the doubt that could have been planted by some regular, honest communication. Anyone hearing allegations about toxicity would have given the Home Farm team a chance to put the record straight. If you've invested time in this way, you'll know instinctively to whom you can turn to act as an advocate for you. Brian, alas, had not done this. In fact, Brian has a long history of acting selfishly and not learning from previous crises, and